Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's session on pharmacovigilance. I, Dr. Sanat Kumar Barmunamgor, Assistant Professor from Department of Pharmacy Practice, College of Pharmacy, Hubli. Today, we are going to discuss what is pharmacovigilance, and we are going to learn some of the objectives. Those learning objectives includes definition of pharmacovigilance, why pharmacovigilance program is necessary, what are the aims of pharmacovigilance program, and how do we classify adverse drug reactions, what are their mechanism of actions, what are the predisposition factors which lead to adverse drug reactions, how do we assess causality of every adverse drug reaction which is occurred. Then at the last we are going to know how to report as well as evaluate, monitor and prevent as well as management of occurred adverse drug reactions, and finally the role of pharmacist in the management of adverse drug reactions. Basically, one need to understand what is the definition of pharmacovigilance. The pharmacovigilance is defined as, according to WHO, it is defined as science and activity relating to collection, detection, assessment, understand and prevention of adverse effects or any other possible drug related problems. So we are going to assess adverse drug reaction which is because of a drug, or it is because of any other drug related problems like a medication error or contraindications. We usually define drug related problems according to Pharmaceutical Network Europe PCNE criteria. We define other medication errors also. So we are going to assess them on the behalf of adverse effects as well as drug related problems. So if we want to define pharmacovigilance, we need to know what do you mean by adverse drug reaction. Adverse drug reaction is defined as a response to a drug which is noxious and unintended, which occurs at doses normally used for prophylaxis, diagnosis, or therapy of a disease or modification of any physiological function. So here, any drug which we use, when it is become a noxious and it is used for intended purposes but it is producing an unintended effects, when you are using for any diagnosis purpose, we call it as an adverse drug reaction. And simultaneously, we must also know that what do you mean by adverse effects? Any untoward medical occurrence temporarily associated with the use of medical product, but not necessarily causally related. So once the event is causal, there is a relationship between the drug and the event. We call it as an ADR. When there is no proper relation is not established between the drug and the event, we call it as an adverse event, but which is temporarily may associated with the medical product, but causality was not clearly identified. So one more definition is serious adverse events, or also we call it as serious adverse reactions. Any untoward medical occurrence that leads to a result of death in the patient, or life-threatening condition in the patient, or any congenital anomalies or any birth defect by the drug, or any serious events which because of that event, if the patient requires inpatient hospitalization or prolongation of existing hospitalization, or results in persistent of significant disabilities or incapacity. So when these are the 5 criteria, when we seen in a patient, we call it as a serious adverse event or serious adverse reaction. So in simple way, the pharmacovigilance is derived from the Greek word pharmakon, means drug, and vigilare means to keep watch. So simple way, the pharmacovigilance is nothing but it is a drug safety monitoring process. So we are going to see how the drugs are acting on human beings, whether they are particularly safe or not. We will be watching every individual drug which is there in the market. So we call it as pharmacovigilance. So that is a reason it is a fundamental component of effective drug regulation systems, public health programs, and clinical practice. So everyone must contribute to do a pharmacovigilance program in a better way. So it supports for safe and appropriate use of drugs. So if we want to support safe and appropriate use of drugs, one must do promotion of or promoting drug or promotion of detection of previous unknown ADRs or drug interactions, or promoting the increases in frequency of unknown ADRs. And third point is identifying risk factors for the development of ADRs. And the fourth one will be the estimating of or estimation of benefit and risk analysis. Coming to the first point, one must have to identify any unknown ADRs which are or drug interactions which are there in the patient. So that has to be understood, that has to be identified, then it has to be reported to the concerning authority. Second one is already there are so many frequencies of known ADRs that also has to be identified and reported. Third one will be one must identify what is the risk factor that for the development of particular ADR. And fourth will be we need to always analyze that whether the particular ADR is overcoming with a risk or overcoming with a benefit of compared to risk and benefit analysis. So the next question is why a pharmacovigilance program? What is the need of doing pharmacovigilance program? In simple way, to understand this, why we need a pharmacovigilance program is the self-medication are very high in Indian scenario. So everyone have tendency to have a self-medication. And second will be the drug promotions. You all know that in pharmaceutical industry, the medical representatives will be promoting their own brands. Even that may also lead to physicians to prescribe their own individual brands. And third one will be the largest producers. As we come across India, we are the largest producers in the country, in the world. So many pharmaceutical formulations are available within the India. We don't know which pharmaceutical formulation will be used particularly for particular disease. So there will be guidelines, but most of the time those guidelines will be mismatched when really rational use of medication is seen. Then coming to the clinical trial, as India is the largest population, so most of the companies from abroad they do clinical trials in India, and approval of clinical trials in India is also very rapid. So because of rapid clinical trials, the drugs into the post-marketing surveillance phase will be very high. Then in India, the use of drugs outside the restrictions are very high. We use most of them outside the restrictions. Then now recently you have seen many of online pharmacies. You can most of this you as well as most of the public can purchase the medicines online. Even this is also going to be one of the burden where we need to always see how a particular drug is dispensed or what is the quality of medicine which is dispensing has to check. So even our online pharmacy is also one of the major concern why we need a pharmacovigilance in India. Now there is an epidemiology data which suggests that there are 4.2 to 6% of ADRs are due to hospital administration in internal medicine because of an adverse drug reactions. In one study, in another study suggests that in United States, incidence of serious adverse reactions among hospitalized patients was 6.7%, and the incidence was that to fatal was 0.3%. So here one must understand that because of this hospital admissions because of adverse drug reaction, in US, fourth and sixth leading cause of death in the US are because of adverse drug reactions. So coming to the India, there are 6.9% of hospital admissions because of ADRs, and out of that 60% of ADRs are avoidable. Just imagine if 60% of ADRs are avoidable, means a role of clinical pharmacist is very important in Indian healthcare scenario. The average hospital cost for a patient is almost about $150. So total cost about $6,197. So cost of because of ADR is very high. Hospital cost is going to be incurred by the patient, so this is also one of the major burden in case of patient. The most common drugs which leads to ADR are NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, and diuretics. Even you might be knowing that diuretics leads to many electrolyte imbalances, including hypokalemia, hypernatremia, warfarin as an anticoagulant, AC inhibitors, anti-tubercular drugs, anti-epileptic drugs, anti-malarial, anticoagulants. These are common drugs which leads to serious adverse drug reactions. Therefore, drug safety monitoring is very much essential element for healthcare. So one must actively participate in his ADR monitoring process. So one more very important point we need to understand that the tests which are done on animals are inadequately predictive of human safety. So most of the tests which are done in animals cannot be reflecting the same results in human beings. That is also a very important point, we need to consider it. And patients in clinical trials which are selected are limited numbers, and trials are also limited. Most of the time special groups are excluded in the study. And information about rare diseases is not done in the clinical trials, but some of the serious adverse reactions, including chronic toxicity, or use of special groups like children's, elderly, pregnant women, pediatrics, and other drug interaction often inadequate and not available in the clinical trial registry. So one must understand that in post-marketing surveillance stage, we may find many unknown ADRs when we do drug safety monitoring of every drug which is there in the market. Coming to the next slide is aims of pharmacovigilance. Here one must have minimum aims of early detection of unknown ADRs as well as interactions, detection of increase in frequency of known ADRs which are already available, and identification of risk factors as well as possible mechanism why that particular ADR is caused, and estimating of benefit and risk analysis. Then finally the patient care as well as safety. Classification of ADRs is again divided into two types. One is type 1 and type B majorly. Type A is also called as augmented, and type B is also called bizarre reactions. Type A is all because of exacerbation of pharmacological effects of the drug, and it is dose dependent. And one example is insulin-induced hypoglycemia, because the pharmacological action and effect of insulin is high, that may lead to hypoglycemia. Next is predictable reactions due to unknown pharmacology of a drug, and which can be easily predicted, and these reactions can be easily preventable. And incidence of these type A reactions are very high, and these are associated with less morbidity as well as mortality, but the incidence of these are very high, so the public health impact is very large. Coming to type B reactions, these are hypersensitivity reactions. These are dose independent. They are not like dose dependent in case of type 1. These type B are totally dose independent. Example is penicillin induced hypersensitivity reactions, or you can take any other drug which is induced hypersensitivity reactions. These reactions are not predictable because these are hypersensitivity reactions. These are not by the pharmacological effects of the drug, and these can be preventable in individual cases. If the patient known history is already available, we can prevent it. And the associated morbidity as well as mortality is very high here, but in clinical settings the incidence is very low. The other different types of reactions are dose related and time related. Those we call it as chronic reactions. It is type C. And type D will be time related, that is delayed reactions, which is because of an ADR. And type E will be withdrawal of reactions. We also sometimes call it as an end of use reactions. Then the type F will be unexpected failure of therapy reactions. sometimes it is called as therapy failure reactions also. So in this table, I just want to put here a clear attention that dose related reactions, like for example, these features are really uncommon, and these are all related to cumulative dose of a drug. And the management for these type C reactions are most of the time we need to reduce the dose, as because these are dose related as well as time related. Or if we withhold the particular drug which is responsible cause of an ADR, there also we can minimize the type C reactions. And sometimes example of these type C reactions are quite rare. Here one example which I want to put here is hypothalamic pituitary adrenaline axis suppression by corticosteroids. So coming to the type D is where it is, as I discussed, it is time related. The reactions occur after a prolonged time. So these are also very uncommon, and these are also related to a particular drug dose. And example is teratogenicity. For example, if a pregnant lady is administered with chloramphenicol as well as tetracyclines, as they are a teratogenic effect, so there is a reaction which is occurred later the period of development of the baby. So these are often intractable. So we need to always monitor type D reactions. Then type E will be withdrawal. These are all because of withdrawal syndromes of a particular drug. These are also uncommon. This reaction can be managed by reintroducing a drug or withdrawing a particular drug slowly by reducing the dose by dose. And then type F, where it is also a very common reaction in case of dose related. Often even drug interaction leads to failure of therapy, because one drug interacts with another drug and reduces the efficacy of any one drug. So where failure of therapy will be very common. So in these particular cases, we can increase the dose, or we can check a concomitant therapy which is administered with a particular drug. Understanding the mechanism of type A ADR is there are three major causes for every adverse drug reaction. Those are called pharmaceutical causes, pharmacokinetic causes, and pharmacodynamic causes. First, pharmaceutical causes are change in the drug quantity, or any change in the property of drug release in the body leads to pharmaceutical causes. For example, in case of formulation factor of doxycycline, this doxycycline will be available in the two different brands. One brand with hydrochloride salts, which is usually associated with the esophageal stricture and ulcers. The one who are lying down, or medicine with one who take a particular drug with adequate amount of water. So during this condition, the pharmaceutical cause is very high. They have a higher chance of having ulcer. So during this condition, manufacturer must use same doxycycline carrageenate resin instead of corrosive hydrochloride. By this, he can try to minimize the adverse reaction by type A reactions. Then, pharmacokinetic is the second mechanism, where because of ADME property of particular drug leads to adverse drug reaction. So any alterations in the absorption, distribution, metabolism, and elimination of a drug will alter its concentration of a drug at the site of action, where it leads to adverse drug reactions. That is particularly type A. Where in case of absorption, if the rate and extent of drug absorption changes, leads to an adverse drug reaction. So any change which occurs in the absorption process is going to have a chance of having an ADR. Coming to distribution, where different alteration in the blood flow, or membrane permeability of the patient, or protein or tissue binding in the receptors level may lead to type A ADR. Third will be the metabolism factors, where individual patient will be having a different metabolic rates. So individual with a reduced metabolic rates, patients who are with a decreased metabolic rate, there will be chances of higher accumulation of a drug in the body because of a toxic accumulation, or patient increased toxicity. The patient may end up with an adverse drug reaction. But in case of simultaneously, in case of metabolism, if the patient has got a enhanced metabolic rate, then the drug won't be in the blood, that leads to therapeutic failure. So metabolism plays a very important role, even if the patient is having higher incidence of metabolic rate or lower metabolic rate. The fourth one will be the elimination process. In case of elimination, if any particular change in the elimination process or drug elimination rate leads to adverse drug reaction, so particularly in case of the drug, or if the patient is having comorbid conditions where patient had polypharmacy, where different drugs has to eliminate through the renal system, where there is a chances of toxicity of a drug in the body, where during accumulation, when the patient has got a reduced elimination from the body, leads to adverse drug reaction because of increased accumulation of drug in the body. So the third will be pharmacodynamic causes, where pharmacodynamic causes are explained with the sensitivity of the particular drug with the targeted tissue or organs which are prone to have an ADR, which is studied by drug receptors level, homeostasis mechanism, as well as disease. So in case of drug receptors level, if the binding capacity of the drug changes, it may lead to ADR. And coming to type B mechanisms are, again, it is divided into three different types: pharmaceutical causes, pharmacodynamic causes, as well as pharmacokinetic causes. In case of type B, pharmaceutical causes are decomposition of active ingredient, where once the active ingredient is decomposed, it may lead to therapeutic failure, or it may changes into toxic drug. So active ingredient is sometimes converted into non-active ingredient, where it is not clinically significant for the treating particular condition, where it may end up with a therapeutic failure. And second will be the effects of non-drug excipients. For example, during a pharmaceutical preparation, and there are many additives, preservatives, coloring agents, and solubilizing agents which are commonly used. So these particular agents or stabilizing agents or preservatives have a chances of interacting with the drug, where they are going to have a chance of affecting producing type B reactions. Then third will be the synthetic byproducts of active constituents, where synthetically produced products, when they degraded, they have chances of producing type B reactions. And coming to pharmacokinetic causes, where again, as I discussed in case of type A reactions, here also it is all because of changes in ADME property of a drug that leads to type B reactions. In case of metabolism of any particular drug, which is unusual reactive metabolite, if it is available, it may lead to again type B reactions. One example is carbamazepine induced hypersensitivity reactions, are one of the example in case of metabolism. Then third will be pharmacodynamic causes, where qualitative differences in the targeted tissue or organ response of a drug may be genetically, immunologically, or neoplastic, or teratogenic causes, are all together they come up with type B ADRs. Some of the predisposition factors which are quite common in case of adverse drug reactions. So some of the few predisposing factors are, first one is polypharmacy, the prescription which is contain more than 4 drugs in a single prescription, where drugs are prescribed, and because of this polypharmacy, if multiple drugs are there in the single pharmacy, if multiple drugs are increased, ultimately simultaneously you will be having an increased chances of developing adverse drug reactions. So second one will be the multiple as well as the intercurrent diseases. If you have a multiple diseases, or if the patient is suffering with the multiple diseases, ultimately the patient will be prescribed by the physician with the other multiple drugs or different drugs, where because of multiple conditions, multiple drugs, because of multiple drugs, increased chance of adverse drug reactions. Third, predisposition factors will be elderly as well as pediatric patients. That is all age groups. Elderly will be, as you all know, that they will be having compromised immune system and compromised body surface area, and elderly patients will be having multiple diseases. As well as in case of pediatric, the body system has not yet developed. So where in case of elderly and pediatric, they have more chances of developing adverse drug reactions, and they are more risky than the adult. Fourth, only with the drug characteristics, where toxic drug are more common and more prone to develop a risk factor of particular the ADRs. For example, you can take toxic or antiviral drugs. You can take anti-TB drugs, for example, zidovudine and all. So some of the drugs which are very toxic may have chance of leading to ADRs. Next, only with the gender. Here, in case of gender, women are more susceptible than the males to develop an adverse drug reactions. Then last will be the race as well as genetic factors. Genetically predisposed individuals are more prone to develop an adverse drug reactions than the patients who are not genetically predisposed. Then next will be the causality assessment. Causality assessment is nothing but assessing a relationship between the drug and the event. So it is a relationship between the drug treatment and occurrence of any particular adverse drug event. So it is a very important part of evaluating ADR reports in early warning systems and regulatory purposes. So if causality assessment can be done, it can be done by clinicians, academicians or academics, pharmaceutical industry, regulatory authorities, and different settings including clinical trials. Everyone can do causality assessment. Usually the causality assessment is classified into three different parameters. One will be the causality assessment will be assessed by opinion of particular experts on the field and clinical judgment of the physicians or doctors who are on clinical settings. And third, it will be done based on global introspection method, where globally all the data will be collected and it will be assessed. The second method will be algorithms or standard assessment methods. And third one will be the Bayesian approaches, or it is also called as probabilistic method. In case of first one, that is opinion of experts or judgment by clinicians and or by global introspection method, the main parameter here is by experts' opinion, where experts are basically assess a causality. Even clinical pharmacologist or treating physician or panel of experts will sit together and discuss what exactly whether the drug and event there is an usual causal relationship between the both or not. So we use usually WHO UMC causality assessment scale, that is Uppsala Monitoring Center scale, where it is causality as well as their assessment is divided into certain, probable, possible, unlikely, unconditional or unclassified, or unassessable or unclassified. These are different methods they use to assess causality, where in case of certain, whether the assessment criteria goes on like whether the particular event or laboratory test abnormality is there, whether there is a particular time and event or time and drug intake is available and which cannot be explained by the drug or disease, whether the response to withdrawal plausible when the drug is withdrawn, any event is pharmacologically phenomenically explained, whether re-challenge is satisfactory or necessary once the drug is given, de-challenge as re-challenge can be able to done. The same wise it is in case of probable. It is also same whether event and laboratory test is normally seen or not, whether re-challenge is not required in these cases. And when we want to classify any particular adverse drug reaction is as possible, where one must understand that whether particular event or laboratory test abnormality is seen in patient or not. if it is seen whether there is a possible time relationship to a drug intake is there or not. We have to understand it, and it could be explained by any other particular drugs or disease has to be understood. And information about the same drug withdrawal, sometimes it may be lacking, that has to be checked. If we want to say it as an unlikely, there must be event or laboratory test abnormality seen, and with the time drug intake there must be a relationship which is sometimes going to be an improbable, and disease or other drug provide possible explanation to the particular drug or not can be seen. If we want to say it as an unconditional or unclassified, event or laboratory test abnormalities must be there. More data is necessary to do assessment, and additional data is need to be procured or to be obtained, and it is under examination. Then if we want to say it as an unaccessible or unclassifiable, a report suggesting an ADR but cannot be judged by particular information or particular event, because the information is totally lacking or it is insufficient and it cannot be supplemented or verified. There is a second algorithm which is available with us to identify a causal relationship is Narinjo scale assessment. Here there are a set of questionnaires which we use to gather the adequate information from the patient to understand the causal relationship between the drug and event. Here the Narinjo has discovered this particular scale, so it is defined as Narinjo's causality assessment scale. Here there are a set of 10 questions which has to be asked to the patient. For example, if are there any previous conclusive reports on that particular reaction which you obtained? If it is yes, we need to put a +1, and if it is 0, then we need to put a 0 marks. And did the reaction or adverse event reappear after the suspected drug was administered? If the patient said it is yes, then we have to keep a +2 marks. If he say no, then we have to give -1 marks. If he say don't know, then we have to score it as a 0. And the question goes like total 10 questions, where you are going to identify whether the particular drug after readministration, whether the reaction appeared or not. If so, it is +2. If not, it is -1. Did the reaction reappear when the placebo was given? If it was yes, -1, it was +1. So these are a 10 set of standard questions we use to identify particular causality in particular ADR. The third step will be assessing a severity, what level the ADR is severe in the patient. It is identified by Hartwig and Sigel scale. It is discovered by these two. They defined it as 3 different classification: mild, moderate and severe. Mild reaction is a one which is self-limiting itself and it do not contribute to prolongation of length of hospital stay. That is nothing but a serious adverse drug reaction. We call it as an SAR. If it is a moderate, we need to require a therapeutic intervention or a hospital admission, or the patient may have a prolonged hospital stay at least 1 day. So it is considered as a moderate. If the ADR to be called as a severe, it should be life-threatening to the patient and it requires intensive medical care, or it should produce a disability, or it must lead to the death of the patient. So that's what we most of the time say. Serious adverse drug reactions are to be defined by several criteria which I discussed in the previous slide. If we want to assess our ADRs, we assess through many ways. Now, if you want to report these to all the ADRs to centers, where do we report? So the next question comes in everybody's mind is what to be reported, why we need to report it, we discussed, and how to report, and whom to report, or who are all the professionals can report the ADRs. So here we have come up with the Indian government, where Pharmacovigilance program of India is coming with a very good stringent use of medications by providing a particular platform called Pharmacovigilance program of India. So here there are some partners for every pharmacovigilance. One is WHO quality assurance cell as well as safety cell, where all the medical practitioners are one team. They do assessment. They are the partner of pharmacovigilance. And Uppsala Monitoring Center, which is situated in Sweden, is a collaborating factor throughout the world for pharmacovigilance program, and there are national pharmacovigilance centers which is established in every country, even it is there in India. Then some of the hospitals and academic institutions can also contribute to the pharmacovigilance program. Health professionals including physicians, dental surgeons, pharmacists, nursing staff, even including patients can also report it, and other media partners are also available with us, that is advocacy as well as lawyers are also contributing to the pharmacovigilance program. Coming to understand that how Uppsala Monitoring Center is functioning throughout the world in case of pharmacovigilance program or ADR reporting is concerned. Its main principal function is to manage an international database of every adverse reports or ADRs which is reported from all the national centers throughout the world, and it facilitates the communication between the countries to country, and it provides a rapid identification of signals, and it is an internal or as well as international advisory panel of experts who always determine the validity and clinical importance of whatever the ADRs generated, that is signals generated. In recent years, Uppsala Monitoring Centers, which it is expanded its role even towards the communication as well as training centers, and clearing every data related to ADR information on drug safety. And even now they are also doing mail discussion communication to the groups, website development they have done it. They are releasing a newsletter annually. Even they are conducting national conferences where they are contributing to the promotion of good center where they can run a pharmacovigilance, and they are promoting safe and rational use of medication. The hospitals, as I discussed, hospitals and academics can also develop their own pharmacovigilance center in their colleges and their premises, and many number of medical institutions are running through pharmacovigilance program. Even government of India has said every medical college must have one pharmacovigilance center, so they can report ADRs and they can find out the medication errors in their particular hospital. Even in academic centers like pharmacy practice department, pharmacology department can play a very important role in training, providing the research and policy development and clinical services as of ADR is concerned. All the health professionals, they can involve in this ADR reporting system. Even private hospital, general practitioner, retail dispensing pharmacists can also be a part of it. Even patient also can able to report their ADR, whatever they come across it about. Since only 5% of doctors participate in a pharmacovigilance system, this process is till today is not efficient. So if you want to report it, the question goes like, what to report it? So we as a healthcare professionals, we report every adverse drug reaction by the new drug or any drug which is already established where it is going to cause all the serious reactions which are well recognized, documented, can also be reported. All reactions to vaccines which are available, for example polio, BCG, tetanus, any vaccine which is available, we can report it. Even we can report reactions to the blood products also, and we can report unexpected high frequency of unknown or known reactions, and we can report reactions which are even in case of pregnant or lactating women, including newborn babies. If we want to report it, the next question is where to report it and how to report it. We can report any adverse drug reaction nearer to the medical center where pharmacology department is available, or you can report to pharmacology or pharmacy practice department where near pharmacy college is available, and or you can directly report to the pharmacovigilance center which is situated in India in Ghaziabad. Also we can report to our regional centers wherever nearer regional centers which are available in between with respect to your place. We can also do online submission of ADR reporting. Even there is an app which is developed by Pharmacovigilance Program of India, that is PVPI, to report adverse drug reaction. So here you can see the picture, which is an one of form which is developed by Pharmacovigilance Program of India for reporting suspected adverse drug reaction form, which is developed by Predisposing. You can directly call to the helpline number which is given here, that is 1800-180-3024, where you can directly call them. You can tell them that if you have any particular ADR, you can explain them what is the ADR, what is the drug, when it is given. So you need to fill some of the data where patient information has to be given clearly. What is the suspected adverse drug reaction which is occurred? What are the other medications, suspected or concomitant medications given to the patient? You need to give your reporters details so that they will take your adverse drug reaction in the online itself. This is how suspected adverse drug reaction forms looks like. You need to fill every individual parameter here. Then you need to write what are the suspected medications given, what is the action taken there, whether the reaction reappeared after the reintroducing the drug, or whether the reaction stopped after the discard of the tablet or after the stop of the tablet. And you need to finally you need to provide a reporter's detail, that is if you are reporting your case, or if you are reporting a ADR, you need to provide your all the particular reports. Then as I discussed, we can report all serious adverse drug reactions, and this is a reporting page where which is taken and released by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and Government of India from Ghaziabad. Here they clearly say that even you can directly find any particular information on particular website, that is www.ipg@government.in. You can report everything, like if the patient has got death, hospital administration, disability, congenital abnormality, or any interventions which leads to permanent damage. You can report non-serious reactions, unknown reactions or known reactions, or any rare ADR to the medicines. You can directly call and you can report it. Then here in India, pharmaceutical industry is very big. It is almost valued at 90,000 crore, and it is growing annually up to 12 to 14%. So molecules are very high. We are the global pharmacy generic producers, so most of the drugs are in the market, and we need to have a safety vigilance. So we need to develop a very good pharmacovigilance center. So that's what Pharmacovigilance Program of India is doing, and it is under the control of CEDESCO, that is Central Control Standard Control Organization, and Director of General of Health Science, that is DGHS, and it is constituted with the Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission, that is situated in Ghaziabad. This PVPI is conducted by NCC, that is National Coordinating Centers. These are in 3 layers. One is peripheral centers, second one is regional centers, third one is zonal centers. So all these tend to work together. There is a steering committee which is formed for Pharmacovigilance Program of India, where the chairman is heading the committee, where he is from the Drug Controller Government of India, Drug Controller General of India, New Delhi, and there are other members which are there. There are scientific director who is from IPC Ghaziabad, and head of the pharmacology from AIMS Institute, nominee from Director General ICMR, then assistant director from DGHS, that is Directorate General of Health Services, and under Secretary as a representative of Minister of Health and Family Welfare, nominee of Vice Chancellor of Medical and Pharmacy University, nominee of MCI, and nominee from PCI, constituted whole steering committee to run a Pharmacovigilance Program of India. This is one safety alert which is released in January to March 2019 by Pharmacovigilance Program. For example, if you find that levocetramine is a suspected drug and it is used for indication of, as we know, that onset of seizures, whether generalized or secondary seizures, newly diagnosed patient above 16 years, or which is an adjuvant for myoclonic seizures in adults and adolescents of above 12 years. And this levocetramine is going to cause encephalopathy, and we need to always monitor this. And if you are using sertraline, OCD drug, that is obsessive compulsion disorder drug, it may produce maculopathy. You need to check it out. If you are using a cetirizine for any urticaria purposes, it leads to tachycardia. You need to monitor it. So this is our safety information which is released by PVPI, and you can directly call to the helpline number. Also, you can ask them. Same wise, some of the drug safety alerts in April and June 2019 is amiodarone, antiarrhythmic drug which leads to acute pancreatitis. You need to always check it out. PVPI has given some of the drugs comparative status along with the global drug alerts. Here you can see that name of the drug as well as what are the risk warnings and what is the status in international level and in India. You can see the drug here, Delectasavir. If it is used, it is going to produce hypoglycemia. So internationally there are 10 cases which are reported, and in India there are 3 cases which are reported. In case of same, if you see the drug dulaglutide, it is going to cause a diarrhea as well as vomiting. There are 1954 cases which are reported globally, and in India there are 14 cases which are reported. About the same, if you consider as a vomiting by the same drug, there are 2022 cases which are reported globally and 19 cases in India. Same, it is reporting even for fluoroquinolones also. If you use a fluoroquinolones, it is going to cause a tendinitis. So tendinitis is globally reported on 8,987 cases, and in India there are 5 cases which are reported. And this fluoroquinolones induced peripheral neuropathy is also reported here. There are, where in international level there are 2,387 cases are reported, and in India there are 26 cases which are reported. And joint swelling by fluoroquinolones are 7 cases in India, and in global level it is 1,376 cases. So all the health professionals are sensitized to carefully monitor the above mentioned alerts, ensure any event related to these drugs are reported. So please mention or to monitor it, and please report the same to National Coordinating Center, that is Pharmacovigilance Program of India. So before releasing these, in 2019, where Indian Pharmacovigilance Commission, that is NCC PVPI, is used to release drug safety alerts. So I have taken a one drug safety alert which is released in 27th of April 2018, where they are clearly giving you what is the suspected drug which is causing event, and why we use, what is the indication of that particular drug, and what are the ADR of that particular suspected drug. Here they clearly mention that some of the preliminary analysis of ADRs in the PVPI database reveals that if you use a dexamethasone, it is going to cause a peripheral neuropathy. But we know that why dexamethasone is used, right? So dexamethasone is used in case of any urgent emergency treatment of anaphylaxis reactions, or sometimes it's used to short-term suppression of inflammation mediators, even during an allergic disorders. Even we use in case of ocular inflammation, we use in case of autoimmune disorders, autoimmune disease. So they have mentioned it, what are the indications for using dexamethasone. But if you use that dexamethasone, these indication cases, if you are using it as a healthcare professional, you need to always monitor that whether the patient may develop or may not develop, but you need to monitor always that peripheral neuropathy is one of the ADR of dexamethasone. In 2015, drug controller India is to release information to all the authorities, marketed authorities or medicinal product marketed authorities. So where they used to give a signals, that is a case relationship between the drug and event, where the PVPI informed all the officers that there is a strong causal relationship with the published literature in case of signal review panel, where they recommended that when you use a fixed dose combination, that is FDC of piperacillin plus tazobactam, the patient will develop hypokalemia and bronchospasm. So whenever you are using a piperacillin and tazobactam in your practice settings, you need to always monitor the patient laboratory test relating to hypokalemia, as well as you need to monitor bronchospasm in the patient. So they have written a letter, and they have communicated all the information to the whole, all the government hospitals, all the governing authorities, manufacturing industries, so that they have recommended to the manufacturing authorities also, said that include these two adverse drug reactions, that is hypokalemia and bronchospasm, in their package inserts, as well as any other promotional literatures wherever they use this fixed combination, and action taken in this regard may be intimated to the office. So the drug controller governor has done a signature, and the copy is circulated to all the related materials, and it's also uploaded in the website. So this copy is sent to all the journal, sub-journal, peripheral centers of CDISCO, and even drug manufacturing associations also. So finally, we need to understand that if you want to detect as well as monitor ADRs, how do you detect it? So we can detect ADRs by doing a pre-marketing studies. You might be knowing that during the development of any particular new drug, safety is tested in animal models, but information like level of acute toxicity, dose dependency, carcinogenicity, and teratogenicity, mutagenicity will be studied, but much data is not taken from the pre-marketing studies. So clinical trials only help to identify 0.5 to 1% of ADR. So post-marketing surveillance stage, that is phase 4 stage, has to be very strong to identify adverse drug reactions. And children are as well as elderly or geriatric patients are usually excluded from the study in the pre-marketing study. So we need to always consider them as a higher risk category in case of post-marketing surveillance stage. Second one will be during a post-marketing surveillance stage, that is phase 4. Spontaneous reporting should be very good established. So spontaneous reporting can be done so to identify unknown adverse drug risk, drug-related problems, and every health professional's duty to report any suspicious risk situation which is come across in day-to-day routine practice. So pre-marketing stage does not yield too much of data, and post-marketing stage should be very strong to identify unknown adverse drug reactions or known ADR to report to the any nearest centers. So PVPI is also concerned with identifying product defects. Any particular product is defected and leading to harmful effects in the patient, any intoxications or any drug abuse, as well as unexpected lack of therapeutic failure that can be easily identified, and PVPI is already doing it, and it is one's healthcare practitioner's responsibility to identify the same. So if you want to identify, there are two epidemiology methods we can use to identify. One is cohort studies, and the other one is case control studies. In case of cohort studies, the patient exposed to a particular drug are followed actively and systematically done a study. Then we have to find out the ADR frequencies are compared with an unexposed control population. So we usually do two groups. One group will be followed with the drug and seen. Another group ADRs are exposed to another group who has to be seen. Second one will be the case control studies, where individual affected by ADE or ADR being studied or identified. So each case is matched with several diseases. For example, pre-control patients randomly recruited from the study basis. So usually two studies are widely used to identify ADRs, that is cohort studies as well as case control studies. So both cases as well as controls are investigated to their exposure to the possible causative agent prior to occurrence of the event. Then odds ratio should be calculated based on the exposure data. Then detection of ADR who are at a higher risk has to be seen. Some of the patients are very high at risk of developing ADR. For example, patients with a renal and hepatic impairment patients who are on narrow therapeutic drugs, and patients who are known to known allergic reactions, and patients who are on multiple drugs, and patients who are breastfeeding or a pregnant woman are very high at a developing risk. So it is one's duty to identify that particular patients who are on polypharmacy also to identify or to detect ADRs. Here some of the rules of pharmacist the management of ADR. The pharmacist should monitor patients who are at greater risk of developing a ADR, for example, geriatric or elderly patients, or patients who are on polypharmacy, patients who are at known ADRs, and pharmacists should monitor patients who are prescribed with the drugs likely to cause an ADR, for example, NSAID, warfarin, anti-TB, anti-epileptic, and he should assess and document the previous allergic status of the patient. He should monitor the drug therapy and its appropriateness, and he should identify drug interaction in case of multiple therapies or in comorbid conditions, assisting the healthcare professionals in the detection as well as assessment of ADRs. The pharmacist should document suspected reported reactions for further future references, and pharmacists should educate the patients regarding ADR, regarding their treatment, regarding the adverse drug reactions. Pharmacists should educate other healthcare professionals about the importance of reporting of an ADR, why it is necessary to report. If we report, what is the use to the patient and what is the use to the manufacturing industries as well as to the government. Pharmacists should create awareness about ADRs among all the healthcare professionals, patients as well as to the public. And if it is necessary, pharmacists should conduct workshops or conferences or seminars on adverse drug reactions for healthcare professionals. These are some of the references where I have taken it for the presentation. Textbook of Clinical Pharmacy, practiced by G. Parthasarathi. Review of Pharmacovigilance by G.E. Campbell. Adverse drug reaction in hospitalized patient by paper by Rebrio MR et al. Pharmacovigilance by overview by Dr. Dattatreyan, and adverse drug reaction by Steffi and Sajet.